Welcome back to System Prompt. Where's the drum roll? We needed a sound effects machine.
Right.
You know why we need a sound effects machine?
Here we go.
You know why we need a sound effects machine?
Why do we need one?
Because it's episode number 20. We made it. We are firmly in the 1%, Peter. We're firmly in the 1%.
Fireworks and stuff to do some.
That's what we gotta upgrade to it. We gotta get a sound machine. We gotta the horns, the fireworks, everything.
Gotta get a
because
soundboard.
we made it to 20 episodes. Welcome back to System Prompt. My name is Val.
And I'm Peter.
And you stuck with us some way, somehow, for 20 episodes. I'm feeling good, Peter. I don't know what it is, but I'm feeling good. Actually, now I know what it is. 20 episodes. That's what it is. And cheers to at least 80 more. I'm putting it out there. 80 more. On the 100th episode.
Well, we did. We committed to 100 episodes. We're doing the 80.
So on the 100th episode, expect the unexpected, bro. I don't know what's going to happen. But
shot out of a cannon. It'll be funny.
At the very minimum. That's probably episode 50. Episode 100, I don't know. We got to do something over the top. But you made it back to System Prompt, and we have a good one today. We're going to be staying with this theme of really understanding agents and diving deeper into it. And today's episode, we're going to really be covering that. And oh my goodness. I actually just had a brain fart. I'm so excited about episode number 20 that I had a brain fart. But
we're having a conversation about quantization today.
See, this is why we're a team.
Yeah.
Pick up. We're talking to Sleepy Peter today. We got to get him up.
I got a newborn at home, man. Come on, come
That's what I'm saying.
2 other kids. Yeah.
And you pick it. This is why we're a team, man. Picking things up where I drop them.
Well,
Peter, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's before we jump into having a conversation about quantization, I just also want to we had a failure live last week, which I thought was amazing. You thought it was amazing seeing what we're walking through, and I did some more due diligence on Microsoft's Copilot Studio, and what I found was this is what we ran into is something a ton of other people are having problems, like a lot of other people are having problems with. Microsoft, you should work on kind of fixing some of that, because that's kind of wild, especially with the amount that you're spending on AI infrastructure.
I totally agree. And you know what? We're going to make an on-air pivot. You know why we could do that? Because we're in 20 episodes. 20 episodes, we could do what we want. I think we should go down that rabbit hole and we should start comparing other agents, Peter. I think we should do more examples, live demos, so there's no funny business. We're not giving you the happy path. But what we're going to be doing is creating kind of our own watered-down evals. We run the same process that provides business value, and we compare how other agents execute the same task. What are you thinking, man?
Well, sure. I mean, I already have a Microsoft tenant, so we might as well go the rest of the route. I have a Google Workspace. We could spin up some gems. We're familiar with LangGraph, LangChain, Crew AI. We could use strands, small agents. I mean, there's definitely a list that we can try. We can run live, see what they do. We can talk about how we're setting them up, things like that. But let's go full circle and back to the quantization conversation, because this one is I like, right? Let's see.
Let's do it. Tell me about it, man.
So before we even dive into the quantization, you're aware of the new DeepSeek V4 Flash model that everyone's kind of losing their marbles over.
An impressive model.
It's for what you're doing. Now imagine you can fit that on 128 gigabytes of VRAM or unified RAM. So that's a single DGX Spark, it's a single Mac M5 Studio, a single AMD Strix Halo. I mean, we could keep going. We had a hardware episode, but if you have 128 gigabytes of VRAM or unified RAM that you can use, you can fit that onto a single machine. It's 284 billion parameter model. fit on something that you can go out and buy as a consumer, and it's not a server rack.
I mean, the first question that jumps to mind is, okay, can it be done? But is this one of those, hey, you could go and conquer the world with this model, or is there a way where you can actually use this model where it's useful?
Well, I use it in practice. I use it now, so I can tell you first, it is hella useful. It retains a lot of its reasoning ability. It retains a lot of its architecture. Uh, you know, it's a mixture of expert model already, so it's around 13 billion parameters are active for each token. Um, and if you're unfamiliar, if you guys are not familiar, you need to go check out Antirez GitHub, because this is not me doing it. I'm going to do my best to try to explain this. This is somebody who's has a lot more engineering chops than I do, and it can really dive deeper in there. But
Sounds
he
like a Bond villain, Antirez.
Antirez, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing what he did though, because it's approximately he turned a 284 billion parameter model into 81 gigabytes worth of checkpoints that can fit on a much smaller system. Now that's why we quantize to begin with, right? So when you think of like your ChatGPTs, your Anthropics, things like that. You're thinking they're more like along the lines of like FP8 or an FP16, which they're floating points. That's what FP stands for. A lot of people think this stands for full precision. It doesn't. We've had this conversation. It's floating point. So then, the more you decrease the floating point number, the less the model actually needs. Now that's a very simplistic way of viewing it, but you're thinking about it condensing the model.
Like a file compression, like say if you were compressing an image, you're kind of doing that for a model, so to speak.
Yeah,
You can still see the image, but the quality, the original quality is not there, but it's still useful for executing what you need with the image.
yeah,
So
and it's enough of what the original quality is to be able to actually use it for the things that you need to use it for. So I think this is a great way to kind of introduce it using Antirez, because he did it on the original DeepSeekv4 V4 Flash. He's got a GLM 5.2 out there. He's got V4 Pro. I mean, this guy's doing God's work for those of us who have these devices, and we're able to squeeze these models on. Same, Unsloth on the other side of it, they're doing amazing things also. Very similar. Um, so let's kind of dive in, right? What Antirez actually quantized? Uh, it is on paper 2-bit, but that's not exactly a completed view of what he actually did. Uh, the routed experts, which contain most of the model's parameters, are compressed using approximately 2-bit formats, right? Um, and there's interesting ways to kind of explain this. So you have expert gate and up projections use IQ2XXS, and expert down projections use K2K. Now, let me try to explain this in the best way, easiest way that I can. The up projection expands the token into a larger workspace. The gate projection controls which of those expanded features are allowed through it. The down projection then compresses the result back into the model and writes it into the shared residual stream. Antirez compresses the gate and up the matrices using IQ2, which is just over 2 bits per weight, and uses activation importance to decide where errors are most tolerable. He gives the down projection slightly more room using Q2K at approximately 2.56 bits per weight, because the matrix produces the expert's final contribution to the rest of the model. So even within a single expert, precision is being allocated according to the role of each matrix rather than applying one uniform setting to everything. Now, it took me like 2 hours to try to get that into a way that people can actually understand it, or even I can understand it, right? Because now we're digging a little further into where I'm more uncomfortable. But all of this is brand new, right? Um, so so other components of it remain at significantly higher precision, which is why it's really cool the way that he compressed it. Attention projections are using Q8. Shared experts use Q8. The output layer uses Q8. Embeddings, routing components, normalization, and other sensitive tensors remain at F16 or F32.
And Q8 is usually more common when you're thinking about quantization at the highest level.
Q8 or INT8, Q8. Usually your BF16 people are more familiar with seeing. But yeah, and all this enables you to compress this model, run it on a DGX Spark or one of the other pieces of hardware, and you're actually able to leverage it to a high degree, right? So because when you're thinking of compressing the model, you're thinking of the loss of accuracy. Now this isn't lossless, right? And it's still experimental the way that this gentleman is pushing this out. But I can tell you first and foremost that it's actually really good. It's really good. I have two DGX Spark. So if I wanted to host the completed without using not without using any compression, but if I didn't want to squeeze it onto one DGX Spark, I could actually have it use a much less aggressive quantization, and we could actually measure it. But maybe that's something to do on a different day because that takes a little bit of more time to do.
Not as impressive as this. This is pretty impressive, I must say.
I mean, just going through it and just having conversations with people and who own some of these devices, and they don't know about it or they haven't seen it. And I'm starting to see it all over the internet and all these people who are running them, and they go, but what about the law? What about this? What about that? But then you actually dive into the nitty gritty inside each expert's the gate up, the projections, expand, transform, and token representation, the down projection. And then you have to understand there's also an importance matrix, right? Aggressive quantization cannot treat every weight as equally important. An importance matrix, or I matrix, uses real model activations to estimate which weight dimensions have the greatest effect during inference. An ordinary quantization asks, how closely can I reproduce the original weights using fewer values? Importance aware quantization asks, which approximation errors are most likely to change the model's actual behavior? Now, this is the thing that Antirez really did that was really cool. Calibrated the quantization using a varied data set covering areas such as coding, tool use, reasoning, prose, and long context prompts. And this all matters because calibration is workload dependent. A quant optimized only on ordinary prose may appear fine in conversation while becoming less reliable at like code generation, JSON output, tool calls, mathematics, long context retrieval, agentic workflows. The I matrix does not restore information after compression. It helps the quantizer decide which information is least safe to destroy.
It's impressive, man. And I guess if there was a way to filter that down, it seems like that's saying it's deciding what it should compress to keep the quality high, as opposed to just randomly compressing anything. And then when you want to filter that out to get the original value, that seems like a happier path to do that, if need be. Is that what I'm gathering?
For the most part, yeah. But it also identifies which things are least safe to change.
Yeah, is being
Yeah.
able to choose that,
Yeah.
because the thing that pops into my head is that, okay, if I'm building out an agent, where I'm working within the edge cases, how do I improve the quality of the output on a local device? Because this is really what we're talking about. How do we get a really good quality model on a local device so that if we run into some sort of issue like we did with Microsoft and we're like, you know what, let's go and build our own agent, how can we get the most juice for the squeeze? Well, if you're at that point where you're hitting the edge with a DeepSeek model, these are the kind of things that you can kind of rest easy in knowing that this is maximizing the output of this model, and this is not just them saying it. This is how it's actually happening. That's why the engineering here is pretty awesome. But
It's great, and I wish I had a better mind of it. And these are things that I'm learning, how to dive into the nitty gritty. I mean, most of the time my time is spent in harnesses, right? That's why I kind of pivoted over into trying Microsoft. I pivot over into using gems, pivot over to building my own harness, and really understanding behavior mechanics to make sure that you're getting the most amount of output. And this is kind of a layer deeper into that, right? How do we change the model architecture to a point where it can fit on a smaller device and still make sure that it's doing the most that it can do and be actual useful model? Because if you have conversations with people, especially some purists, they start talking about how quantization ruins the model, degrades performance, you can't really do anything serious with it. But now all of a sudden, with the mixture of experts model and the ability to actually not as aggressively, you're not hitting the entire architecture, you're hitting bits and pieces of the architecture to kind of shrink it down. All of a sudden you're in this environment where you're just like, oh, well, maybe that's not the case anymore. Maybe I can actually use these. I can use these aggressive quantized models to actually do real work with, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm loving it, right? Because now I got DeepSeek V4 Flash model running with my local harness, and honestly, I love it. I can't get enough of it. It's been amazing. Is it the fastest thing in the world to run? Not really. One of the things that we do also want to talk about here is speculative decoding, right? Because speculative decoding is a large part of why it runs well at all, right? And speculative decoding introduces a smaller or cheaper draft mechanism, right? Uh, so instead of asking the model for one token at a time, the draft mechanism predicts several future tokens. The full DeepSeek model evaluates these proposed tokens together. It accepts the longest prefix it agrees with. Any rejected suffix is discarded. Normal decoding resumes from the last accepted token.
What's the tokens per second you're getting on?
Right now, because it's leveraging dSpark, which is a kind of like a multi-token prediction method that it that it uses. And we'll get into that. I'm getting between 20 to 30 tokens per second.
It's not bad, man. It's
No,
not bad at
especially not
all.
and have I had some hiccups in using it? Mostly, yes, but mostly that's my harness, and those are things that I had to correct with my harness. I mean, we could jump in and ask it a question. Like, hold on, let me see something. Let me just get this going. Maybe we can see some happy path. You want me to ask it a question? You have any question in mind, or anything that you wanted to specifically go see or check out, or
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
all right. Well, here we go. Right, so I have it. I have it in my Discord. And hello, hey Peter, what's on your mind today? Right. So, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
This is why I love Peter, man. He entertains my shenanigans. You
Well, I
know,
want to see what kind of. I mean, now you're seeing the answer. That's pretty damn fast, considering, right?
pretty good, man. I'm impressed.
What's actually going on today? I am recording live with Val, and we are showing off this chat. And I was like, wait a second. But you also have to understand there's a lot of uh, now just for context, just for context purposes, and I don't want it to dive too. I don't want it to kill the episode. But the reason why it knows who Val is because I told it about system prompt, and it's in the memory that the model has. So just to give you an idea of how fast it can churn out some tokens, that's how fast it can churn out some tokens. Uh,
That's impressive, man. I must say that's work. That's daily work quality output speed.
And the interesting part about it is that with the so hold on, let me bring up my stats for this specifically. So there's multi-token prediction, right, which predicts further in advance, right? So then you also have dSpark, and the current Antirez or Dwarf Star, right? That's the company implementation supports DeepSeek provided dSpark auxiliary model. dSpark replaces the legacy one-stage multi-token prediction support model for dSpark, right? So dSpark is a little bit more sophisticated speculative drafter. It reads hidden states from DeepSeek V4 Flash and can propose up to 5 future tokens. Dwarf Star, the company, then verifies those proposals with the full model and accepts only the valid prefix. So this is why it can run 20 to 30 tokens a second, because of this pathway, right? Because of this token prediction. Now, the interesting part about the token prediction path is that it's actually slower on shorter prompts and faster on longer. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense if there's more tokens to predict in the future.
Yeah.
Like if there's only 3 to predict because of a short answer as opposed to 12, then maybe, it kind of makes sense in a weird way. I'm still learning this stuff, so um, there's a lot more deep diving that we need to jump into, but that's yeah, that's impressive, man. I must say, it has me thinking. Okay, how many more DeepSeek V4 quality models can drop that will drop in the next few months, years, or DeepSeek and better that is starting to rival, frontier models that can also be quantized using this type of. Is this setting the precedent for how future quantization will look? And because if this is the first time it's done, or one of the first times that it's done, it's only going to get better.
Yeah,
So
I
it can
mean, look,
become more efficient.
absolutely. And it started with speculative decoding, right? Speculative decoding, you had a smaller model spitting out responses, right? And a larger model confirming that those responses were the things that you want to see. And then it moved to MTP. MTP is actually not even that old. It's interesting that some of this is referred to like legacy MTP paths, and it's like a legacy. Like this shit is like a year old. Like how
Yeah.
legacy.
It's
But
like on the job interview when they say we want you to have 7 years of cloud code experience. Like what?
I've seen that. I've seen that. And it's crazy. It's insane. Um, but the speed in which that we're able to kind of squeeze this onto smaller and smaller machines uh, really lends itself well to the direction that it looks like these things are going. Like you have the NVIDIA RTX that are coming out. You have the M5, I think, is released, not released, who knows. DGX Spark was kind of a front runner. That's continually getting pushed out. AMD's Strix Halo, or they've named it a bunch of different things. Um, and I think you really, and people are like, well, you couldn't you have paid a ton of subscription costs for this, and you could have just paid a sub and it would have been less money than owning a DGX Spark. Well, and I tried to explain to somebody. I said, okay, let's say I have a DeepSeek V4 Flash model running right now. Let's say I didn't want to take care of every single thing. I can tell my DeepSeek V4 model to look at my emails, look for certain specific things, or even a PR in a GitHub. Look for a PR in a GitHub, open the correct terminal, and use Tmux to talk to Claude Code to fix the problem, as opposed to fixing the problem itself. And none of that is external API costs. I can keep this up for Claude Code, leverage DeepSeek, have DeepSeek doing the autonomous triggers that triggers the next following responses. And you can play. There's so many different ways that you can actually use these local models to kind of make sure that it's your data, your instructions, it's the same issue that we ran into Microsoft, right? When you run into issues with agents, it's because the runtime is a black hole for us. We can't We got an error. We got a completely ambiguous error response, which
So
does absolutely
disappointing. That's so
absolutely
disappointing.
nothing for us when we're attempting to troubleshoot. But if we own the runtime and we have the model, then all of that is within our control, and that's the point, right? That's the point.
I tried to big up Microsoft too. I was so disappointed. I'm like, there's no way that this could be
Whatever.
the end of the
It
conference.
is.
I don't want to go back down that road, but I
It's
was
a
disappointed
yeah,
in real time. You saw it too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. Um,
This is Peter being nice, by the way.
yeah.
Interesting.
I
This
don't
is.
want to talk about it. It's just
I don't- I-
here's some of the things about for dSpark, the Dwarf Star, the Antirez specific rollout. It's one user, low concurrency, so this isn't something that you're using to spawn sub agents and something that you're using to host for very many people. It's a heavily quantized target. You can use it, uh, there's different kernel costs depending on what you're using, a DGX Spark or an M5 with MLX. Separate draft model overheads, verification overheads, different accepted rates, different prompt types. And if you look in this actual GitHub again, this is all experimental. So we're in the early stages of this, but it's really tough for me to fathom a world in which people don't really start really just caving into some of this local architecture to even to communicate with the frontier, like I gave the example of before. Or you can use this DeepSeek V4 creative PyCode pipeline for it specifically, and you have determinism at boundaries like Claude Code or any of the other coding specific harnesses that make it really good. I mean, it's not a GLM 5.2, but how far away do you think we are from a GLM 5.2 local that you can fit on a single machine? I mean, that's a 758 billion parameter model. So you're talking significantly bigger than DeepSeek V4 Flash, right? Significantly, not just.
Yeah, but now you're talking. You could run software develop like you can build software with that and let that thing run in terms of the quality of that model. That'll be a major breakthrough if you
But
can.
there's people that do that now with this model.
Yeah, and this is
Yeah.
why it's so impressive. And I know we're geeking out on it, but when we're talking about and this has been a long running conversation that we've had since the beginning of the podcast is is the value of is the value of the tasks that you're using with this infrastructure worth it? Well, it's worth it if you're doing valuable tasks. If you're just using this and doing all this just to have a nice chatbot, this is not how you're maximizing the tools. But if you're going through this process and you're understanding quantization, what does it mean and why you're doing it, and I know we're going to dive a little deeper in terms of all the different ways that you can actually even set this up. What's the point? Well, the point is if you could go and build software for it, not even software, we're talking about anything enterprise or anything like that. I'm talking about what if you had a simple problem in your home that you could spin up some custom software to solve it as opposed to trying to look for something that you have to shoehorn your problem into. This is the real solution. It's built and hosted locally to solve a local problem. You don't need to, for your Internet of Things device, you don't need to go and use some other software. You can spin up something that controls your household devices and you could tweak it to your specifications if that saves you 2 hours a week. Because now the question becomes, what is that 2 hours a week worth? You know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things, especially using like localized models, is just continuous inference. Things like validation, things like I don't know why the word has completely escaped me, so I'm just gonna explain it. Um, so let's say you have a bunch of information that you want to make sure is well rounded. I can set my models on the task, and I don't have to worry about how much inference it's taking. I don't have to worry about API costs. I mean, look, my setup is very uniquely local, right? I have CRX and G, which is a local open open source metadata search engine for you to look for things on the web. So I'm not absorbing Google costs, I'm not absorbing Tavoli costs, I'm not absorbing Brave costs. I'm hosting my own search engine and leveraging these models to go out and validate any data that I need to, source any data that I need to, and I'm leveraging my own harness, so I know that I have strict validation steps to make sure, and those boundary layers are deterministic. So I know that they're solid. I'm not the model's not checking its own work. It's but when you see stuff like this, and you can, and I love using the DeepSeek model, but it's so crazy the way this is all evolving and how quickly all this is evolving, because first people lost their minds over the Quen 3.6 models, the 27 billion parameter, 35 billion, the Gamma 4 models that came out. They lost their minds because there's great pieces of intelligence at your desk that you can use, and you don't need to sit here and rely on a frontier model. And with the DeepSeek V4 Flash model, I've actually, how sometimes you sit there, you shoot the shit. Like I have like a working diary around some of these models. I sit there, I'll just talk through the ideas. I'm not sitting there. I don't need some kind of sycophantic response. But DeepSeek V4 model has officially overtaken any frontier model for me, and I've completely switched to that, especially considering that I built the memory layer for it. So not only is it going to sit there and shoot the shit with me and have this kind of journal-like, I tell it, we're going to journal, we're going to have a conversation about what's going on in my mind, is great. So it sit there's responsive. Not only does it do that, but extracts any relevant facts, stores it in memory so it can resurface it later on down the line when I need to. They built that all, and anything that I've built that can now be reproduced anywhere else, because I can roll this out anywhere. You can use Ansible and Terraform, having infrastructure as code. If a lot of you are familiar with that, but it's very cool. It's a lot of fun. It's a really cool time to be in tech. I know there's a lot of fear going around, but I have a lot of enthusiasm. I mean,
This thought just popped into my head, and I'm like, okay, Antirez, which for those who don't know, this is the one of the founders of Redis. So he's no slouch. He's really good, and when he pushes out engineered feats like this is letting you know he's still at the top of his game. But the thought that pops into my head is, well, OpenAI's GPT 5.6 just became more efficient by by using its own models to make itself more efficient. I'm like, what happens when that loop hits the local models if it hasn't been done already with DeepSeek in some level? Do you think that's a path that can happen where you see like the foundation is being set right now with guys like Antirez kind of breaking the norm on or pushing the limits or the boundaries on what could be done to have these models run locally? But do you think there's a path where the models itself are being used we're kicking Antirez to the side, or now DeepSeek V5 is making itself more efficient? What are your thoughts on that?
So this it's a good question, first and foremost, and it really makes you think and try to understand if
That's
the
an
model itself,
episode. It's
the
an
model,
episode
it's an
20
episode
question.
it's a episode 20 question. That put me on the fucking spot. Anyway, look, the model doesn't understand its own capabilities, and it doesn't understand. You can talk to it about maximizing that and kind of put it to task, but I don't know that models don't have agency unless you give it agency, right? So can a model take the task on of making itself more efficient? Probably. The answer to that question is yes, right? It can, absolutely. But a human has to set it on that task. It doesn't have the agency to kind of correct itself. So it has to be somewhere in its runtime. It has to be able to like look at that and go, hey, that is wrong. That is wrong. And it has to be aware of its own runtime. I mean, the model itself doesn't understand the input nor the output that it's putting out. It's feigned understanding. It makes it seem like it's understanding. It makes it seem like you're talking to a person or a machine or a thing. I mean, the more you talk to AI, the more you know when you're talking to AI. But when you're thinking about it being self-repairing, or those things have to surface, and it has to, somewhere in the architecture, those things have to surface, right? For it to understand that there's a problem, then human has to give it that kind of agency to go ahead and self-correct. But I don't know that the first few, like even you use Fable 5, you're using K3, you're using the top of the line models, even those aren't right all the time. So then it becomes the issue for, when people go, oh, I want this to be completely autonomous, and it's like, nah, you don't. You want a human in a loop. So is there a human in a loop for this self-correction? Is there somebody to validate what the model's correcting? The model can also conceivably break itself if you're giving it that kind of power also. So until I start seeing a little bit more consistency out of these models to be able to do that degree of self-correction, I'm going to say it tells a human that these things exist, and a human confirms whether it needs to fix it or not. I think would be the best route for something like that to happen, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, makes total sense. I feel like that's the road we're all going down, which is, on one hand, it's a little scary because this is where I think everybody thinks AI is going, but it also it makes the most sense. It takes 6 months for this model to perform better, but then the next time it takes 5 months, then 4 months. How does that happen if all the other variables stay the same? Got to throw a model in there, and how does that happen is going to be interesting to watch.
But just remember, it's not free acceleration, right? You're compressing. So your draft generation consumes compute. Your target verification consumes compute. All the tokens that you're predicting that it rejects is wasted work. It only helps generation, not pre-fill. And again, a lot of this is experimental. But I want to end this on not a negative note of what I just said. I want to end it on a really good positive note. Antirez did not merely compress a model file, right? He built a vertically integrated inference system around the bottlenecks that appear after the model fits. And sometimes this is the kind of engineering chops that we should all aspire to.
Yeah, impressive, man. I'm telling you, it's impressive. I must say, impressive. This makes me hopeful for what local hosting will look like a year from now, which seems like forever and a day from now. But we're gonna blink our eyes, and it's gonna be the summer of 2027, and I think our minds are gonna be blown in terms of how the local market has grown and why it makes so much more sense.
Well, not if Dario has his way, right?
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I love Claude, but yeah, this
You need to get him away from the keyboard. You need to stop him from writing these posts. I mean, he's been saying that AI is dangerous since GPT-2 when he worked for OpenAI. Smart guy, just.
I mean, if he knew that these kind of models were on the horizon long before we did, I can see why he's doing all this fear mongering. He has to figure out a way to protect his market share, knowing that models like this
get eaten anyway.
These are last ditch efforts, and it sounds like that every post. How do
it's
we?
Like, don't do that. That's dangerous. Come to me. And
Yeah.
then you have OpenAI going, you know what? We're going to cut costs and give you 5.6 sol, and we're going to keep the same generous amount of inference that we've given you. And they're over there going, we don't know if we're going to have Fable 5 included in the subs.
Yeah, Uno reverse, brother. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. If he knew, I mean, his ear has to be to the ground. And he probably knew that this year some of these other models were going to drop. And what's the plan to make sure we keep our market share? Fear mongering. I mean, it's a very effective strategy. But the problem is like now we know it's possible. The fear mongering, on one hand, is probably we'll have to have some sort of extreme event to have everybody pause. But then we can't unsee what we saw as consumers. We know it's possible to get quality models for way less What do
Almost
we
like
do then?
OpenAI accidentally hacking Hugging Face.
Like, yeah, man. And is this a precursor to what's to come? I don't know, man. But we can't unsee what we saw. We know it's possible to get really good quality models for a fraction of the price. Are you going to force us to have to pay more when we know we don't have to? Um, this is going to be very interesting. This is the yin and the yang of the benefits of having access to these tools, and we're going to keep screaming about why these are beneficial. Not to say you can't use Frontier, not to say you shouldn't. We obviously clearly do, but hey, there are other options out there, and as long as we um, can talk about them, we will, so that everybody knows that there's a yang to the yin, and if we're being forced into these frontier models only, there are other options. We've got to sound the alarm for other engineers like Antirez to go and do something amazing with models we do have access to, so that we don't get pigeonholed into what's to come. Because yeah, these guys they have to do something, and at this point in time, that's why I love competition, brother. We don't. It's really not
Keeps
our.
everybody honest.
It keeps everybody honest, man. Yeah.
This was a fun episode 20. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna like Val was saying before, we're gonna be deep diving into a lot of different agent architectures, showing you guys what that looks like, showing you guys some tasks being run, and it's gonna be a lot of fun, and it's gonna be a lot of heartache. And luckily, I have no hair, so I don't, you know.
You don't gotta pull it out.
I don't gotta pull any of it out.
Tug out the beard, maybe.
It's already, it's gray enough. I don't want to touch anything. Have a great one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you so much, guys.